Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for Wednesday, February 13th, 2019. On today's episode, we're going to talk about the latest film and TV news. This is Slash Film Editor-in-Chief Peter Sciretta. And joining me on today's podcast is Slash Film Senior Writer Ben Pearson.
Hey, what's going on?
And writers Hoai-Tran.
Hey, everyone.
And Chris Evangelista.
Hi.
Okay, we got a bunch of news to cover today, so let's just dive into it. Let's dive into the most exciting news of the year, Chris, and that is that they are making a horror movie about a pair of jeans, killer jeans.
They sure are. It's called Slaxx with 2 X's, so you know it's really serious and hardcore. This is a film. It's about a haunted or / possessed pair of designer jeans that kills people. And that's really all you really need to know. I mean, honestly, what more do you want from a major motion picture than killer jeans?
For it to be directed by Wes Anderson.
Okay.
But I don't understand this. Like, so, okay, some girl goes to TJ Maxx and buys some jeans, right? And then she goes home and tries them on, and she ends up being murdered. And then someone strangely is like, we're going to donate these jeans to Goodwill, and gets that pair of jeans. And then the second person's murdered that tries them on, right? And then,
I think you understand this just fine, Peter. Why did you say I don't understand?
But how is, like, why would anybody want a pair of jeans of someone who got murdered in those jeans?
Well, you don't know when you go to the Goodwill and you buy something, there's no way of knowing if someone was murdered in that thing you're buying. It's not like they put that on the tag. Like, someone was murdered while wearing this blouse. That doesn't, for all you know, every pair of clothing item at Goodwill is from a murder.
But
half off for the death discount.
Yes.
I mean, yes, you're correct. But okay, then how do the characters in the movie at some point come to the realization that it is the jeans that are haunted?
You're gonna have to wait for the movie to find that out, my friend. I can't tell you that so soon. We have to wait.
Wait, do we know anybody involved here?
It's people I've never heard of before, so I'm not even going to read their names. I think it's a Canadian film. So
okay, so this will probably be playing at the Toronto International Film Festival in the Midnight Madness competition.
I really hope so I can see it. I will be first in line for Slaxx.
Okay, let's move on to some real news. Let's talk about Phil Lord and Chris Miller's next movie, which is going to be a live-action sci-fi adventure called The Last Human, which kind of sounds familiar because didn't they do The Last Man on Earth?
Yes.
And
yeah.
I mean, I guess if this Last Human you could say that he's solo on the planet?
God, okay.
Okay, HJ, tell us about it.
Phil Lord and Chris Miller are heading back into the live-action realm with The Last Human, which is a sci-fi thriller at the center of a very heated bidding war between multiple studios, excepting Disney and Fox, of course, for obvious reasons. Sony's TriStar Pictures landed the film in what may be the biggest deal of the year thus far. It's an 8-figure deal, this is a film that's being described as, quote, reverse E.T., in which 3 robots discover and protect a human child. So not exactly Last Man on Earth, but it's something that has a very similar title, and it's supposed to be set after the robot apocalypse, when humans have been extinct for 30 years, and follows a 12-year-old robot who is happy to live in a world without crime, pollution, or war, but one day discovers a human, Emma, also 12 years old, who has been living her entire life inside an underground bunker. And they form an unlikely friendship and go on some sort of voyage to find something on a map. So that's
they're looking for dry land.
Yes. Or perhaps the remnants of human civilization. Who knows? So this is going to be kind of a girl and her robot story, which we've kind of seen recently in a blockbuster form with Bumblebee. But Lord and Miller will be behind this, and they've, of course, seen great success recently with the Oscar nomination for the film Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which they produced and which Phil Lord co-wrote. And this will be their first original story that they will be directing as a feature film. They've only really done adaptations or just adaptations of known properties before as directors. So this will be the first, I think, original concept that they'll be doing as the directors.
This kind of worries me, guys, because I think this is the first film that they're making that actually sounds like it could be a good movie from the concept. Mm-hmm. Right? Like usually they make things that, we think are like, oh, that's not going to be good. 21 Jump Street movie, or, Solo Star Wars story, or, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, or a movie based on Legos. And they underpromise and overdeliver. But everything about this sounds very cool to me. This sounds like totally something up my alley. What do you guys think? Are you excited for this?
I'm intrigued. I really like the reverse ET angle, and it seems like something that is very kind of on trend for today. There's a big kind of comeback for that childhood adventure story, especially with robots thrown in. And I think that with the Lord and Chris Miller behind this could be a really just enchanting and captivating movie. And I trust them. I think I also underestimated them for Lego Movie, for 21 Jump Street,
Everybody
and
did.
They keep surprising me. We'll never know what happened with Solo a Star Wars story, but I'm sure their version would have been pretty good as well. So I'm excited to see what they have in store with an original movie. And I feel like I do understand your concerns. This sounds good. It's also their first original movie. Could it be good, or will it be like the reverse? But I think this is got a lot going for it.
It also sounds to me that after their experience directing Solo a Star Wars story and getting kicked off that project, the first film that they are, tackling after that is a live-action sci-fi adventure story. It seems to me it's a little bit of F you, Disney. We're going to show you what we could have done or been capable of. Ben, do you have any thoughts on this?
I am very on board for pretty much everything they do until they give me a reason to think otherwise.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to the Oscars. We've been talking a lot about how the Academy of Motion Pictures is trying to make the Oscars more exciting and digestible for the general audiences, and they've been trying to make a lot of bad decisions, the latest of which they're going to not broadcast live 4 of the categories. And this is especially the categories that they have chosen has kind of angered a lot of people around Hollywood. Ben, tell us about it.
Yeah, so in the latest terrible decision that the Academy has made about this year's upcoming Oscar ceremony, they have said that 4 categories, Best Cinematography, Best Editing, Best Live Action Short, and Best Makeup and Hairstyling, are going to be announced in the actual theater during commercial breaks, and then, as you mentioned, sort of broadcast, edited into a package and aired in the ceremony at a later time. Those awards are going to be streamed live online at Oscar.com if people are interested in watching it that way. And I know that, some people I'm sure are going to watch it online, but the vast majority of people are not going to be, watching this, are not going to be tuned into the live stream for this. So naturally, a lot of Hollywood, players are very upset about this. People like Guillermo del Toro, Alfonso Cuaron, Russell Crowe, all of whom who have won Oscars in the past, are lodging their complaints about this really, really dumb decision. Del Toro said, "I would not presume to suggest what categories should occur during commercials on Oscar night, but please, cinematography and editing are at the very heart of our craft. They are not inherited from a theatrical or literary tradition. They are cinema itself." And you can read several other responses from people that I've sort of compiled in this article at slashfilm.com. But that sort of gets to the heart of it. Especially the categories, the idea of choosing cinematography and editing, which, as Del Toro talks about, are 2 essential components of making movies. To have those not go up live and for people not to be able to see that, as it happens is an embarrassment, frankly. I have no idea why they would make this decision. Yeah,
it's I do want to say that I have seen a lot of people online outraged on social media, basically, expressing their anger over this. But a lot of people seem to be reading the headlines and not actually reading the stories. And it seems like a lot of these people seem to think that they are cutting these awards from the telecasts completely, and not that they are going to air the acceptance speeches in some kind of truncated form. Mm-hmm. When they come back from commercial or whatnot. And I'm not saying that that's any better, Well, no, I am saying it's better.
Yeah, it's slightly better.
Yeah, it's better because it's still going to be televised. It's just, the whole probably, I'm assuming, we don't know how it's going to be truncated, but I'm assuming that instead of having that long drawn out, reading the nominations thing, that they'll just have the nominations on screen and then be like, and whatever won, and then that person will just be up on stage and we'll get a 1-minute version of their acceptance speech. It's what I'm assuming. Is cool.
Yeah, I really hope we get to at least hear their full speeches. But I don't know. I mean, that's the whole thing with this year's Oscars is they're really trying to. They say that they're trying to make the ceremony shorter. And I'm worried that they're going to, because the general audience won't know. I'm worried that they're going to cut around and sort of slice up some of those acceptance speeches, which is like a real shame because this is the one night a year that these people get acknowledged. And yeah, it's just a big bummer.
Now, I'm going to play devil's advocate here, guys. There's a whole part of the Academy Awards that is not televised on television called the Technical Academy Awards. And we're not all out there on Twitter arguing that we should be seeing these tech guys go up on stage and accept, awards for their advancement in, visual effects and stuff like that. But we are someone that's doing... documentary short film. So what is the difference?
Anybody else want to chime in here? No? All right, I'll take it. I mean, I think there has been some discussion, I think, within the Academy itself about maybe having the live action, like the short categories being packaged separately, sort of in a at the governor's ball or whatever that technical ceremony might be. But for something like cinematography and editing, I mean, like I said, that's just essential. That's movie making 101. You cannot have a movie without those things. And yes, you can make a movie without visual effects and without some of the other stuff that appears in those other ceremonies. So I think it's just the fact that these 4 categories, makeup and hairstyling too. It's like, that's a very, very important part of making movies. And as far as I understand it, if this plan holds, 4 different categories are going to be presented off camera at the 2020 Oscar ceremonies, and there's like a rotation thing going on. But I cannot imagine that, Best Actor or Best Picture or something like that would ever get, cycled into this rotation. So it seems like, I don't know, the entire thing seems unnecessary. They really should just stop trying to reach the broadest possible audience in an attempt to reclaim the glory days of when 40 million people tuned into the Oscars, and just accept that that's never going to happen again, and just let the show happen, man. What are you doing?
But how do you fix this, Ben? Because the Oscars are an award ceremony, but they're also a television show. Do you know what I mean? Like, a network pays lots of money to get the rights for the Oscars so that they can sell advertising and make money, and they want as many people as possible watching that because they've spent, invested so much money. And again, I'm playing devil's advocate here. So they need to present a show that's entertaining to mass audiences while somehow does not, compromise the award show in some way. So how do you do that?
Well, go ahead.
First, get rid of the bit where they bring out the people who count the tallies every time.
Yeah.
So that part always just brings the show to a halt. And that one year they tried to turn it into a joke, and they had that, the little Asian accountants, and that just kind of screwed them over too, because that was just all the racial stereotypes and everything. Yeah. So they can probably get rid of that.
And as Chris has said many, many times, get rid of all of the bits, all the stupid, man on the street stuff, all of that. It's just, that's, I mean, I love the Oscars, but even that's by far the worst part of the show. So first of all, Peter, I think that the answer is hire somebody who wants to produce the show, or who is going to be in charge of this, who actually gives a shit about the Oscars, because it really seems like whoever's in charge right now does not. And then, maybe do 5 minutes worth of Googling into your host before you announce one. That could be a start too. They actually went out to The Rock this year to try to get him to host this, but he was busy filming Jumanji. I don't know, maybe just this is one of this is the Academy's biggest night of the year. Maybe treat it as such. I don't know.
Would we be happy? Or, I mean, would we not happy? Would we be okay if they did take the short film categories. What are there, like 3 of them, I think? And maybe didn't show those live and run those as a package. Is that a good compromise?
I mean, I think so. There will be people who are angry about anything, but I think that's probably a better compromise, especially because most people don't know, even us, like people who work in the industry and cover the industry for a living are like, completely unaware of a lot of the short stuff. And like, people, try as you might, a lot of that stuff is not easily found. Some of it is online, I think, for right now, and some of it might even be in theaters in the LA area. But for the big portion of the population, I feel like that's I don't know.
Not do even think? Accessible. It's not even something they can see,
right?
If they wanted to. The crazy thing about this is late last year, the Academy wanted to add another category to the ceremony, which is just, I don't know, crazy. Anyways, let's move on to a story that we weren't able to cover on Friday when I was away doing my interview with the How to Train Your Dragon director. This story broke that they are making a horror movie spinoff of Aquaman. Chris, what is going on here?
Yes, in Aquaman, Aquaman and Amber Heard's character with her terrible wig encounter these creatures known as the Trench, who are Atlanteans who, I guess, mutated because they were in the dark for so long, and they're scary monsters basically. And apparently,
it's basically the part of the movie where James Wan gets to like show off his like horror directing skills.
Right. Yes. And apparently Warner's was so happy with this, and they're so happy about Aquaman being a big hit, that rather than just wait for a Aquaman sequel, they're going all in and making a Aquaman spinoff that's about these creatures. It's about the Trench, and none of the main Aquaman characters are going to be in it. So Jason Momoa isn't going to be in it, Amber Heard isn't going to be in it. So it's just going to be a completely separate thing. It's pretty much what they've done with James Wan's Conjuring universe, basically, where they make one movie and then they start spinning things off, which I guess makes sense because James Wan is involved in both of these. So that's what's happening.
Who is involved in this? Do you know?
Let's see. So Noah Gardner and Aidan Fitzgerald, who I've never actually heard of, will write the script, and Wan is going to produce it with Peter Safran, who also produced Aquaman.
Have you seen Aquaman yet, Chris?
I have not seen it yet. I've seen clips of this scene, but I have not seen the full movie yet.
Yeah. Is this now that they're making a horror movie? Will you go out and watch Aquaman?
Well, the Blu-ray is coming to me, so I'm definitely going to watch it. But I'm really excited about this. I feel like this is such a strange, different approach to superhero movies, and this is what I want people to be doing. I'm tired of the same old, same old. I like the idea of taking a superhero movie and doing something really like weird with it. And the idea of just taking Aquaman and then making a horror movie based on that is so out there. And it's risky and it's different. And I'm looking forward to that.
So you're kind of selling me on this, but my first reaction to this news was that Warner Brothers just saw all the reviews, and in every review of Aquaman, people pointed out this trench sequence because
I'm sure that's true too, but that doesn't mean the movie can't be good. I mean,
HT.
I'm intrigued. Yeah, I'm intrigued by this because, like everyone else, the trench sequence was the best part of Aquaman, and it was James Wan flexing his horror muscle, but also introducing this sort of Lovecraftian imagery into this film, which really fit with the just gonzo visual style of the entire movie. And I think this would work actually very well as a low budget horror film. That's what they're planning to do, more of like a low mid-budget film. And I think this could be a good film. I'm intrigued because their design is really cool, and even though they're a bunch of kind of faceless zombie-like monsters, they could be a good villain. I'm sure they won't be like the main characters or anything of this film, but I think that this would make a really just interesting and compelling horror movie.
I just wonder how low budget can it be if it takes place underwater. But or do you think this is like people from our world keep on disappearing near this trench?
Yeah, I'm guessing it's going to be like, like John Carpenter's The Fog, where there's like a seaside town getting attacked by trench monsters. Like, it's not going to be like in Aquaman where there's like thousands of them. I'm guessing it's going to be like a few who end up, I'm sure it'll be like a kid in it. There's always a kid in a movie. He's like, the trench are coming. And his mom's like, you're full of shit. And then the trench show up and start eating people.
Maybe the kid can talk to fish, and then they'll be like, oh, maybe he's half Atlantean or something.
Right, yeah. And then he'll be in Aquaman too.
Yeah.
And then it's revealed in the third act that the trench monsters were just after the kid because he has special abilities of some kind.
Right? See, we wrote this entire
movie. The movie. Hire Warner Brothers.
Okay, let's move on to the actual Aquaman 2. It is announced that it is actually officially in the works. HT, what do we know?
Yes, Warner Brothers has tapped David Leslie Johnson-McGoldrick, who co-wrote the first film with Will Beall, to pen the script for the Aquaman sequel. And this is the first steps toward development for this film. It hasn't officially been, greenlit yet, but this is basically confirmation that this film is in the works. And the studio still has to sign off on the script, as does
it's
James
happening.
Wan,
It made so much money. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. This was their biggest DC universe hit, even more so than The Dark Knight Rises outside of the DC extended universe. So definitely an Aquaman 2 is going to happen. So there aren't really any details other than that David Leslie Johnson McGoldrick, who has a very long name full of first names, is going to be penning this script. We don't know yet if Will Beall will be joining him again or if James Wan will be back to direct.
I'm assuming not, but you never know. He seemed like excited to explore the other kingdoms in this world that he created in Aquaman. So we'll have to see. But let's move on to a story that we've been talking about for the last few months, and that is these Marvel Netflix shows and what's the future of them. Every other week, it feels like we hear a different story and a different answer. Ben, what did we hear this week?
Yeah, so the latest is Craig Erwick, who is the Senior Vice President of Originals at Hulu, was asked if Hulu was interested in bringing any of those canceled live-action Marvel shows like Daredevil and Luke Cage and Iron Fist back to life on Hulu. And he said, Marvel has a ton of titles we'd be interested in. It just kind of depends on when they're ready and who, most importantly, is going to be behind these things. We've had a relationship with Marvel since Runaways. We're getting into business with them on these animated shows. I'm sure it will lead to yada, yada, yada. So anyway, that's the gist of his quote there. A ton of titles that we'd be interested in. So that sort of leaves the door open that these shows could theoretically be resurrected at Hulu. And I speculated that might happen, weeks ago when we were talking about this initially, because Bob Iger, who is the head of Disney, the CEO there, wants to invest more heavily in Hulu, and Disney is about to own 60% of Hulu as soon as that Fox acquisition goes through. And then, bringing these shows, which have a built-in fan base and are sort of more violent, not really like kid-friendly kind of shows that maybe probably wouldn't fit very well on Disney Plus, bringing those to Hulu might be a good way to attract more global subscribers, which is what they're trying to do with Hulu. So yeah, that again, this is all very theoretical, and I wish, for the love of God, somebody just come out and officially say on the record what is going to happen with these things so we can just stop speculating about this. But that's the latest. I
mean, everything you said there, Ben, sounds logical, but that quote from that Hulu executive to me sounds like wishful thinking. Like, oh yeah, it'd be great to have more, content that people care about on our server. Yeah, I mean, right. That's basically what it sounds like. It's like it depends on who's involved or whatever. So it doesn't even seem like he's too sure of would they bring, Daredevil back from the dead, with the actors and creative people involved. Right. I'm assuming it would be rebooted entirely. But
yeah, that's possible because we don't know what the contracts are like for people like Charlie Cox and some of the other stars and even the showrunners and writers for those shows. But he said Marvel has a ton of titles we'd be interested in. So that could just mean we're interested in Daredevil as a property, for example, not necessarily this exact version of Daredevil that has already existed. So maybe they just mean, 3 years down the line, they could, reboot a Daredevil type of show on Hulu or something. That is also possible too. So I really hope somebody makes a decision here. I'm wondering if maybe after the Disney Fox deal physically goes through, if Disney is going to make any sort of announcement, and Marvel, or if they're going to make any sort of announcement about what is going to happen there. So hopefully that deal ends up going through, which I think the last we heard, it could go through as soon as the end of this month. So stay tuned, I guess.
But do you think they would even reboot these characters at this point? Like, I know we've seen that in movies. Like, we've seen a lot of movies recently where, only a year or two after the last installment, they're rebooting that character with a new actor and completely new story. But we don't see that on TV a lot. Do you think it would work with, like, Daredevil?
Man, I don't know. I never, to be honest with you, I never really watched beyond Daredevil. I got like halfway through the first season or something, and I followed these shows sort of from afar. So I'm not sure. I don't know. I almost wish that they would get just re-envisioned in animated form, like you guys were talking about, on a recent episode of the show about how Hulu is getting into business with Marvel, working on those animated series. Maybe that would be a good way to sort of transition from this into an animated form and then back out into live action in a rebooted form there. I don't know.
Okay, let's move on to our last topic, and that is the Frozen 2 trailer that hit this morning. We're going to give our reaction to that trailer. So if you have not seen the teaser trailer for Frozen 2, now is your opportunity to check it out. I am shocked, guys. I woke up this morning and watched this teaser trailer, and it's nothing like I expected. This to me plays like a Marvel teaser trailer. Like, has this really dramatic music. The opening shots of Elsa with the waves and stuff almost looks like a live action movie, and the whole thing plays like epic and not Disney whimsical and fun. Everything I think we've come to know with this franchise. Like, I feel like it's not here. Like, who is this trailer trying to appeal to? Like, I feel like it's not.
Hey, Peter.
Jacob?
Yeah, this is Jacob Hall, the managing editor at Slaxx.com, and I heard you talking about the Frozen trailer and figured I'd jump in and say something about it real quick.
Okay.
Because my reaction was initially very similar to yours. Why and how are they selling Frozen 2 with this strangely grim, very serious trailer? And maybe it's because I have, two nephews and two nieces now. And I know a lot of parents, but I feel like in the past 5 years, Frozen went from being a movie that people genuinely love and was really surprising and inspiring to a lot of people to being almost a meme, a movie that's only talked about in terms of how many times parents had to hear Let It Go, how many times parents had to deal with Olaf, how many times it's been reduced to the movie that's put on 30 times a weekend because the kids are watching nothing else. I think people over these years have forgotten that Frozen was like a legit movie with really lovable characters and a great story and messages that meant something. So even though this trailer is really heavy-handed in its attempt to really sell Frozen 2 as a quote-unquote serious movie, I feel like it's a successful attempt to remind people that, hey, Frozen was not some direct-to-video junk your kid likes. It was a Oscar-winning movie that people went head over heels for in like a genuine, passionate way. So I'm not sure if the trailer is successful, but I do think as a reminder of that, I have to admire the intent.
I will say there were, looking back at Frozen, there were some dark moments that may have translated to this more darker trailer for the sequel. And that was, sequences where I think Hans, the evil prince, almost killed Elsa with a sword, and if she hadn't, or Anna, sorry, almost killed Anna with a sword, and if he hadn't been stopped by Elsa, there would have been blood. And I don't know, other moments like that where Frozen got into strangely dark territory. But Disney has done that before with their films. There has been death and murder and loss and like some melancholic moments. But yeah, I think that despite taking that into account, this trailer and the sequel looks a lot more adult and a lot more serious than anything I expected.
Do you think it's also, the people I know that have kids, it's almost like they grew up with Frozen and now they're kind of over it. They're like, getting into the age of like, oh, that's a kid movie. So do you think they're trying to appeal to those children who are, getting into that age as well?
Yeah, I think it's 100% accurate. I remember when I was a kid, I went to the age where, like, in the years after I loved a movie, I'd be like I remember, I hate to admit this, but in the years after I saw Toy Story for the first time, I thought, man, Toy Story is for kids. Man, I was so dumb. Why did I like that? And it wasn't until I kind of looped back around on that when I got a little bit older, saying, hey, Toy Story was actually good. Why was I rejecting Toy Story just because I liked it when I was younger? So I think Peter's onto something here.
Chris, what are your thoughts on this Frozen 2 trailer?
It's very brief, so it's hard to get too much of a feel for it, but it looks great. Visually, it looks cool. And I have to admit, like that ending where they're looking out at, I don't know, trees or something, and the music starts like swelling. I was like, ooh, this is very dramatic. I'm enjoying this. I mean, I liked the first Frozen, although I think that movie is very it's very top heavy. I feel like the last like 45 minutes of that movie are very forgettable, and all I really remember are, the beginning half, and like, the minute they start hanging out with the trolls or something, I was like, I don't care about this at all. And so I'm hoping that, they learn their lesson and, this will be better. I mean, Frozen is definitely not my favorite Disney, like recent Disney movie. Like I think like Moana is like a million times better. I have not seen Tangled, but I hear that's better. So, I'm not like Frozen, but I liked the first film enough. I liked the songs enough that I will give this a chance.
Ben, any thoughts?
I'm a big fan of Frozen. I like this trailer a lot. I thought it was, very surprising, but really cool. There's a lot of cool imagery here, like Anna doing like a leap of faith from Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade moment in there. The cynical part of me wonders if they're marketing this, in addition to the reasons that you guys mentioned before, in like sort of an action heavy way, because it has two female protagonists and they're trying to reach out to like the young boy market and like make the movie seem cool for them. I think we've probably talked about movies taking that tack before.
I mean, the whole naming it Frozen instead of the Snow Queen, and Tangled for that matter, renaming that Tangled instead of Rapunzel, was definitely a tack that Disney used before. But both of those films were both very like female geared anyway. So I think that original marketing tactic did not work out.
Yeah. And HJ, you are doing a trailer breakdown for this trailer on the site. There's a bunch of stuff in this trailer that I wanted to ask you about. Like, who are these new kids? Do we know?
We don't know yet, but we do know that there are two new characters that are played by Evan Rachel Wood and Sterling K. Brown, and that's possibly these two characters that we see. One is a young girl in a sort of like tunic and pants, and another is a man who's blonde and is kind of flying through the leaves. And there's been speculation before that Elsa would be getting a girlfriend. So with Evan Rachel Wood cast, that speculation heightened, and possibly this could be happening with this new character. And we also saw in a poster released alongside the trailer that it is hinted by Josh Gad that this poster has a hidden message in it, and people are speculating that means something about the Four Seasons. And because this trailer is very fall foliage centric, and we see this young man flying through leaves, that possibly we're going to meet a character who can control leaves and like fall centric sort of powers, and other summer and potentially spring centric powers.
And I know you're probably the biggest fan of Frozen out of this group. What did you think of this trailer outside of the marketing tactics?
I was blown away by the animation. Like the waves in particular are so photorealistic that Brad Oman, who pointed this out in our Slack, he said that Elsa looks almost out of place because the waves look so realistic, and she kind of is maintaining her same, CGI self. But I was really impressed with this. It is very action-packed, which made me feel like, yeah, this is kind of more catered towards the demographic that, again, wasn't quite that into Frozen in the first place, like male demographic and stuff. So I wonder what direction this film will go in. It is still a teaser trailer, so we don't know yet. And I will say I did like Frozen a lot. I am one of those people who think that Tangled and Moana are both better than Frozen. I think I agree with Chris too. Like that, I really like the first half until we end up with the singing rocks, and that was not a fun part for me. And I kind of still wish that they did a straight adaptation of the Snow Queen, because that would have been amazing. But I still really like Frozen. I think the talent is great, and we also got a glimpse of, or sneak peek rather, of one of the original songs for this movie, which is just like Idina Menzel vocalizing, but it sounds really great. So we'll see. I'm sure with the original team behind it that Frozen 2 will be just as good, if not better than the first.
I'm just surprised that they're not playing up the music more. Like there isn't even like a really hint of a musical number in this trailer. Jacob, I know you gave her your defense of how they're marketing this film, but what did you think overall?
I think it looks beautiful. I think the imagery looks great. Like I said, I'm not sold on the tone the trailer is taking, but like I said, I think it's purely them trying to remind people that Frozen's not a joke.
Yeah.
I want to hear music. I hope there are more songs, because as everybody's mentioned before, Frozen acts like it's going to have the big closing musical number, and then it doesn't, and it's extremely frustrating to revisit it for that reason. So I love the feeling of adventure and scope on this trailer, but I hope they go a full Moana and remember this is a musical until the very end, and don't stop suddenly having music so they can make way for plot like a lot of Disney movies have in recent years.
Very cool. Okay, you can read all the stories we've talked about on today's podcast on slashfilm.com and linked in the show notes. This podcast, Slash Film Daily, is published every weekday on iTunes, Google Play, Overcast, Spotify, all the popular podcast apps. Please feel free to send us your feedback, questions, comments, concerns to us at peter@slashfilm.com. And please rate and review this podcast on iTunes. Tell your friends. Spread the word. And we'll see you tomorrow.